We are Bloomberg's in-house research division with 500 analysts across the globe, and we cover 90-plus industries and 2,000 equities and credit. Very psyched to have Matt today. Please welcome Matt Lyteson, Chief Information Officer of Technology Platforms at IBM, and we'll be talking about digital transformation strategies to build a foundation for success.
Thanks so much for having me.
So,
should I say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fireside chat should be a little bit more intimate, I think.
Yes. So when Uber came along and disrupted the the transportation industry, and Airbnb changed the contours of the hotel industry, we heard everyone talk about the future being digital. And I sat through a number of such sessions where industry trailblazers were quoting Amazon as a poster child of that digital future, until they went and bought Whole Foods. And then suddenly there were talks about the future being phygital or omni-channel or other such names. Along the way, most of the banks that I covered came up with their mobile apps, their websites got jazzed up, and they started calling themselves digital banks. This actually trend was common across a lot of industries, with a lot of companies trying to call themselves as tech companies now. I'm so pleased to have you with us here today, because I think this is a perfect opportunity to really understand what transformation or digital transformation truly means. So, Matt, let's start with that. Like, how do you think that this whole concept of digital transformation has evolved over the years?
Well, I think you set up some good examples, and certainly during the last panel we heard some of the application of AI. But I like to think about this, when those examples you were giving, we were talking about simply digitizing our processes. We needed to inject technology into every aspect of our businesses. And I think what really shifted in November of 2022, when this thing called ChatGPT got onto everyone's radar, there's like, oh, there's something new and exciting we can do. But I think now what we're seeing, when you think about what has fundamentally shifted from just digital transformation to this AI-powered transformation, is the convergence of our business automation through technology, traditional AI, which is still extremely important in a lot of the industries, and then also this concept of generative AI, which, as you heard the examples with customer support, things like IT transformation, things like digital labor, can do things that we weren't really talking about just a few years ago. So I think all those things coming together is really what's setting the stage for now this AI transformation wave that we're in.
So coming back to the word transformation, so what exactly does it take to build the foundation for a solid, let's start with regular AI transformation?
I think the foundation is absolutely critical, because what we find, the organizations need to move more rapidly than ever. We're experimenting with use cases. I heard even giving bonuses out for what's the most innovative use cases that we can get in our organizations. Really exciting. So what do you need to do? You need to be able to try these things out quickly, see if they work or not, and if they work, great, continue to adapt them, and then if they don't, simply turn them off. And we like to think about this within the context of really this enterprise platform, and I call it an enterprise platform for business automation and AI. And simply put, it's that technology architecture that sits underneath everything that you can rapidly develop business cases on, these technological use cases for your AI, but it also supports things like your security, your compliance, your guardrails, your AI ethics that are so critical, all these use cases. And if you have that set up correctly, then you're able to try a lot of things out with low risk, see what works, see what doesn't work, and move on from there.
Yeah, that actually points to the exact problem. Like, the easiest thing about AI is the AI. Like, what goes on before that and what kind of is required to kind of set up a solid foundation for that is another conversation, right? So moving on to Gen AI, and I promise that we're going to talk about a little bit more around hype versus reality around that. So I was presenting at an event, this was earlier 2022, and we had one of the tech giants, I'm not going to take names, present, and they displayed these really amazing models, which was, again, it was the pre-ChatGPT, but they were like the generational AI models. And it ended with a statement, we have this really cool solution, and up to you how you want to use it. It just makes me wonder, are we kind of putting the cart before the horse? Is this like a solution that we are trying to find problems to solve with? And to that effect, like, what are some of the most common areas where you've actually seen real benefits come out of generative AI?
I think you highlight something very important. Obviously, we are in this state of, I would say, almost frenetic energy, all this excitement. What can it do for us, from generating images? We see things now, like even generating movies on the fly. And I think what we're really seeing is three primary use cases. You heard about one a little bit before with this customer support. That can be internal customer support, such as what we deployed within IBM. We call it Ask IT, and really giving all of our employees, within 100 days, by the way, a new way to interact to get IT support so that our support agents can focus on those really complex, hairy issues like when your laptop doesn't work, to the external customer support. We also see a lot of really positive use cases around IT transformation. The fact that we can translate legacy languages on systems that maybe are 30, 40, 50 years old that we don't understand, that are critical parts to our business. We see a lot of that in financial institutions. I've got some that I'm responsible for. Well, now we can dissect that. We can give our software developers new tools to be able to analyze for security vulnerabilities and give them guidance on this. So this whole domain of IT modernization. And the third bucket is really around what I would characterize as digital labor. So I think what we're seeing here now is just this manifestation in what we'll call chatbots. Everyone's got a chatbot. I think I saw one organization deployed 3,000 chatbots for everything. Well, all these little digital assistants are helping us all as knowledge workers, and even workers that are not knowledge workers that are doing physical things in the field be better at their jobs. And so I think these three buckets of use cases are really where we're starting to see a lot of value across industries.
Got it. So chatbots, IT modernization, and digital work. And that includes digital code, right? We were talking about that getting it deployed across a lot of companies. In the same spirit of hype versus reality, what can generative AI not deliver for you at this moment?
Yeah, so I think two things really to keep in mind, and one sort of tongue-in-cheek, because we had an experience, we deployed an agent, I think in about 60 days, really as a generalized use case for all of our company. We call it Ask IBM. This gives you a way to get tasks done, like help me write my blog in the morning, because I don't like to write blogs. I'm not a writer. I get a little bit of writer's block on that. But then everyone thought that this was going to automagically solve enterprise search. We were magically going to find any of that content. How many of you have that thing where you can't find anything in your file repositories? Generative AI is not going to help us with that. The other thing that I think is extremely important, we get these very specialized use cases. You can think HR, you can think your sales team, where you need to have a deterministic answer. How many days of paid time off do I have left? Well, if I put that into a generalized model, it may give me the wrong answer, and that could have profound ramifications for your organization. So that starts to highlight the necessity for combining this business automation, connecting with your data and your systems of records with these large language models that can then interact in a new and different way. But they all need to come together so that you just aren't throwing the next iteration of an LLM at a specific problem.
Understood. So you mentioned about IT modernization, right? Like there are a lot of firms whose tech stack is still not like the latest tech stack and modernized on-cloud infrastructure. How should firms with legacy infrastructure think about this AI transformation, and are there any midterm solutions that they can run with?
Well, I think it really comes down to two things. Can you get at your data in a modern way? And there are lots of technologies. I understand this isn't a tech talk. You need to be able to access your data in a secure way. And then this concept of this enterprise platform is absolutely critical so that you can have the software developers, engineers, and even we're starting to see non-software developers, people that are experts in functions like HR, like your finance, like your tax, not just coming up with the ideas, but actually building the solutions. The tools are out there. You need to have access to your data in a secure way. And what's all tied into that is this concept of AI ethics. I need to be able to trust the AI that we're putting out there. And so we spend a lot of time incorporating AI ethics review up front of our business cases so that AI is not making decisions for people. It's not replacing people, but it is augmenting that human capability. That's extremely important. And then what we call our 3 pillars of AI trust and transparency. And that's trust. Do I understand all the data that went into the model? Am I accessing and seeing results that I, as Matt, should be able to see for my organization? Because there's some things that are, let's say, corporate sensitive that I may not be able to see. The second component is fairness. So is the AI evaluating the questions you're asking it in a fair and unbiased way? And you track that at the beginning, but you also need to track that over time as the AI is potentially learning with new and different use cases. And the third pillar is really what we call explainability. So do we know how the AI is arriving at its answers? And as we put these 3 things together, I think those are really the combination of the foundation of the technology stack that's required for any organization to get off the ground and be able to experiment really rapidly.
Yeah, I think that's a very relevant point. Like, this is not a point-in-time solution. You need to keep re-evaluating your models.
That's right.
To see if there's incremental bias getting built as they're training on different data types. And to your point, how does the firm culture need to evolve as you're undergoing this AI transformation?
Well, I think, and we heard some of this in the last panel, where you need to get comfortable with people working with the technology, make them feel comfortable also that they are not going to lose their jobs. This is a great time for raising the bar of everyone in the organization with new and enhanced skills. So we're taking some of the similar actions that you heard before, but it's also this notion of how do I try things out very rapidly in this agile, experimental way. I've got a hypothesis. I'm going to evaluate my use case on time to value, and I'm going to have this platform on which I'm going to build it, but you've got to do these rapid iterations. So the example of Ask IT that we did, we built that in 100 days, but we weren't done there. That only handled 70% of what we needed it to handle. We're continuously looking at the data to figure out how do we need to tweak the dials, what are additional use cases that we need to intersect with that so it learns over time, and that we as an organization are learning over time. And I think some of those facets of, be a scientist, move fast, be able to experiment and understand that not all these things are going to work out are all key attributes that I would say organizations want to aspire to.
Definitely brought me back to my engineering days, developing a hypothesis and going with it. It feels like a long era gone. There's an audience question that I want to address as part of this. So empirical evidence shows that human in-the-loop reinforcement learning to be the best performing implementation stack for AI/ML projects. Unfortunately, this is counterintuitive for AI/ML projects funded with a headcount reduction mandate or goal. Can you share some views on how to present and justify human feedback into your AI/ML projects?
I think it gets into a little bit of what I was just mentioning here. It's like, let's not talk about taking headcount out. I mean, I think that's the wrong conversation to have. Let's talk about how we are scaling our organizations to grow much more effectively. And as part of that, we need skills. We need people that understand what the AI is looking at. How do we train this in order to come up with the best results? And that's where the reinforcement learning comes into play.
That's a very interesting point. So if you're going on to pitch an AI project with headcount reduction, you need to build new KPIs to evaluate the success of those projects, in short, right? I think we're coming closer to time. I had asked you, I gave Matt a little homework to do.
You did. So. I failed actually the first test when she asked me this during our practice session.
Yeah, so I'll pose that question here. If you had to project the future, what am I doing today in my day-to-day work that'll completely change over the next 5 years? Yeah,
so I did what I think any reasonable person today was. I asked 5 friends, and I also asked my 3 AI friends, my 3 famous AI chatbots, what they thought. The good thing was none of the AI came back and said they were planning to take over the world 5 years from now. And they all talked about benefiting humanity. So I'll take that with the sigh of relief.
To say that.
They probably trained to say that. It was kind of interesting, though, when I asked some of my colleagues and friends, and they came back with things like, hey, I'm going to be happier at work because I get to focus on the things that I am most excited about and not some of these mundane tasks we get involved in. And then an interesting thing happened because we had some people come up with, well, this will help me plan a better vacation. I immediately went to, well, this certainly better help me get my wife the gift she wants on our anniversary, which I don't have 100% on that, just to be fair. But what struck me is that as we are able to leverage this technology to be better humans, to be better humanity in things like medical care, things like rapid drug discovery, things like helping us to live longer, that is really profound. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot of these real interesting use cases once we're done with this productivity. And I think that also gets back to the points I was speaking about earlier. That's, if you think about how AI is going to intersect with our daily lives and making us live longer through different techniques, trusted AI becomes even more important than we're even thinking about it today.
So I'll give you my example. My 8-year-old has terrible handwriting, and my husband keeps backing him up, saying he's going to type most of his corporate career anyways. Like, why do you badger him to write well? I have a one-up on that. Who knows how typing will be important going forward, because you've started doing a lot more voice-based commands, and with the way NLP is progressing, like, who knows whether he'll type a lot or not.
I think you're that. I think between typing, I got young kids too, and maybe hopefully not having them learn how to drive, even when we live in the suburbs, I'd take both of those as a win.
Well, I'm not very confident with my Uber still, but I'll take, or with my Tesla still, but I'll take you on that. With that, we're at time. Thank you so much.